6 people lie slaughtered. The killer, still there, lives among the dead. This is the chilling tale of Hinterkaifeck, a remote Bavarian farm where a family was brutally murdered and their killer vanished without a trace. For days, the perpetrator shared the house with the victims, a macabre secret hidden in plain sight. We will delve into the horrifying details, the strange occurrences leading up to the massacre, and the baffling clues left behind, attempting to understand who could commit such an unspeakable act. The year was 1922. Hinterkaifeck was a small, isolated farmstead nestled deep in the Bavarian countryside, about 70 kilometers north of Munich. It was home to the Gruber family, Andreas Gruber, a stern patriarch, his wife Kazilia, their widowed daughter Victoria Gabriel, and her 2 young children Kazilia and Joseph. Also living with them was the newly arrived maid Maria Baumgartner. The family was known to be somewhat reclusive, and local gossip often centered around their unusual living arrangements. Andreas Gruber had a dark reputation, having been convicted of incest with his daughter Victoria, who was also the mother of Joseph. This disturbing history undoubtedly contributed to the family's isolation and the strange atmosphere surrounding Hinterkaifeck. But before the murders, a series of unsettling events began to plague the farm. The Grubers reported strange footprints in the snow leading from the forest to the house, but none leading back. It was as if someone had approached their home and simply vanished. Then, Andreas Gruber discovered a set of house keys that didn't belong to anyone in the family. They were found on the property, seemingly dropped by an intruder. The family grew increasingly nervous, sensing an unseen presence around their home. Adding to the unease, strange noises were heard from the attic. Footsteps, creaks, and even whispers. Andreas Gruber, armed with a shotgun, investigated multiple times but found nothing. He dismissed it as rats, but the family remained deeply unsettled. Just days before the massacre, the previous maid had abruptly quit, claiming the house was haunted. She reported hearing voices and feeling an oppressive presence, refusing to stay another night. Her departure further amplified the family's growing fear. On March 31, 1922, the new maid, Maria Baumgartner, arrived at Hinterkaifeck. She had no idea that her stay would be tragically short, ending just hours after her arrival. The farm, usually bustling, would soon fall silent. The following day, April 1st, the unthinkable happened. It is believed that sometime during the evening, Andreas Gruber, his wife Kazilia, and their daughter Victoria were lured into the barn, one by one, under some pretense. There, they were brutally struck down. The weapon used was a mattock, a heavy pickaxe-like tool typically used for digging. The blows were precise and devastating, indicating a killer with both strength and a grim determination. The 3 bodies were then stacked, covered with hay. After dispatching the adults in the barn, the killer moved to the house. There, young Kazilia, just 7 years old, was murdered in her bedroom. Then, Maria Baumgartner, the new maid, met the same horrific fate in her own room. Finally, the youngest victim, 2-year-old Joseph, was killed in his cradle. The sheer brutality and methodical nature of the killing suggest a killer driven by something far beyond a simple robbery, or perhaps a mind completely devoid of empathy. For several days following the murders, an eerie silence fell over Hinterkaifeck. No one came or went, but unbeknownst to anyone, the killer remained on the premises, living in the house with the 6 deceased bodies. Neighbors noticed smoke rising from the chimney, and the family's dog, which was usually kept inside, was seen running free. Mail piled up in the mailbox, and the children missed school. These small details, initially dismissed, would later become chilling clues. On April 4, 3 days after the estimated time of death, neighbors grew concerned. The mechanic who was supposed to repair Andreas Gruber's engine arrived, only to find no one home. He waited an hour, then left, reporting the unusual quiet. The following day, April 5, a search party was formed. Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a neighbor who had a past relationship with Victoria Gabriel and was believed to be Joseph's father, led the group. What they discovered inside the barn was truly horrifying. The bodies of Andreas, Kazilia, and Victoria were found stacked in the barn, covered with hay. The discovery was a shock, but the horror deepened as they entered the house. The remaining 3 victims were found inside, each in their respective beds. The scene was meticulously preserved, yet deeply disturbing. It was clear that someone had been living in the house. Food had been eaten from the pantry, and the animals, including the cows and dog, had been fed. This suggested a chilling intimacy with the crime scene. The initial investigation was, by modern standards, rudimentary. The local police were overwhelmed by the brutality of the crime and the lack of obvious clues. Many mistakes were made from the outset, hindering the search for the killer. The crime scene was not properly secured, allowing curious onlookers and even villagers to tramp through the house, potentially destroying vital evidence. The bodies were quickly moved, and a thorough forensic examination was not performed. Despite extensive questioning of over 100 suspects, no one was ever charged. The local community was small and tight-knit, but no one could or would shed light on who might harbor such animosity towards the Grubers. The case quickly turned cold. The motive remained elusive. Robbery was quickly ruled out, as valuable items and money were found untouched in the house. This led investigators to believe the motive was personal, perhaps driven by revenge or a deep-seated grudge. One prominent theory focused on Lorenz Schlittenbauer, the neighbor who discovered the bodies. He had a contentious history with Andreas Gruber and was widely believed to be the father of Joseph. However, no concrete evidence ever linked him directly to the murders. Another theory implicated Karl Gabriel, Victoria's husband, who had been reported killed in action during World War I. However, his body was never recovered, leading some to speculate he might have faked his death and returned to Hinterkaifeck. The incestuous relationship between Andreas and Victoria also fueled speculation. Perhaps a jilted lover of Victoria, or someone seeking revenge for the societal taboo, committed the heinous act. But again, no definitive proof emerged. A more sinister theory suggests that the perpetrator was a transient or a vagrant who had been hiding in the attic for some time. The strange noises, the missing keys, and the footprints could all point to an unknown individual already residing on the property. This theory gains traction when considering the killer's continued presence for days after the murders. If the killer was already living there, or planning to, the post-murder activities become less about a macabre fascination and more about convenience. The fact that the animals were fed and food was consumed suggests a sense of routine, an almost domestic existence with the dead. This points towards someone who was either deeply disturbed or incredibly practical, treating the farm as their own. My own theory leans towards a solitary, perhaps mentally unstable individual who had been observing the family, or even living in secret on the property, for an extended period. The escalating strange occurrences suggest a build-up to the tragedy. The killer likely had no direct personal vendetta against the entire family, but rather an obsession with the farm itself, or perhaps one of its inhabitants. The brutal, impersonal nature of the killings, especially against the children, supports this. The previous maid's claims of a haunting, dismissed at the time, might have been genuine perceptions of an intruder's presence. The killer was likely a ghost in the house even before the murders, an unseen observer of the Gruber family's life. The lack of robbery as a motive strengthens the idea of a squatter, someone seeking shelter and sustenance, rather than material gain. The killings could have been a desperate act to maintain their hidden existence after being discovered, or perceived to be discovered. The methodical nature of luring the adults to the barn and then systematically killing everyone suggests a calculated approach. This was not a crime of passion, but one of grim necessity or disturbed control. The continued presence in the house afterward, feeding the animals and eating the food, is perhaps the most chilling detail. It implies either a deep psychological detachment or a warped sense of entitlement to the farm, even with its dead inhabitants. The Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of Germany's most enduring and perplexing true crime mysteries. The brutality, the isolation, and the lingering presence of the killer create a story that continues to haunt those who hear it. The case serves as a stark reminder that sometimes the most horrific acts occur in the most unexpected places, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions and a chilling silence. The killer disappeared as mysteriously as they arrived. Despite numerous investigations and modern techniques applied to the old evidence, the truth of Hinterkaifeck remains buried. The attic, the footprints, the attic noises, they all point to a malevolent presence that was never truly identified. What do you think happened at Hinterkaifeck? Who was the killer, and why did they stay in the house with the bodies for days? Share your theories in the comments below. Backhand index pointing down. If you are fascinated by unsolved mysteries and true crime, be sure to subscribe to Mind Unlocked for more deep dives into the unknown. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next investigation.